This is a special midweek edition of my channel. It's a follow-up to the video I did last week on festivals in your homebrewed world. So one of my oldest subscribers, Lauga Christofferson, commented that while he did like the archetypical festivals that I listed and showed ways that you could put them into your homebrewed world, he missed Carnival, or Carnival as it's known in other places of the world. The week-long celebration of dancing in excess that's held all around the world. And I commented back to him that in fact I had made a section on Carnival, but I felt that it was too long, and I also thought, well, I've incorporated some of these into the religious festivals that I mentioned. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I should do a little subsection here on Carnival, a special video, just an addendum to cover, because it is, in terms of the traditions that it has and the scope of it, tons of opportunities for homebrewing. So, here we go, Lauga. Your wish is my command. Hello again, folks. KR King here, helping you homebrew your own campaign. The traditions of Carnival come to us from the Middle Ages, and they are connected around the season of Lent, the fasting. It's always held before Lent begins. And this was an after effect. A lot of the meat was slaughtered in November or so, and the stores would run out, or the meat was going to go bad. So you had periods of fasting up until the growing season. These were, incorporated into the Christian traditions. So people would eat the last of their stores in a sort of celebratory fashion. And the Lenten season was one of fasting and of confession. And so what happens when people know they're heading into this kind of a period, they often create a sort of last chance festival, the last opportunity to engage in these, eating and drinking, dancing, all this sort of thing. And these are prime features of Carnival. Not just eating and drinking, but dancing, public displays, huge parades, and also costumes and masquerades, and trickery and mischief, role reversals, all sorts of interesting things wrapped up into this, week or weeks-long celebration, which ends at Lent. And in the United States, we have Mardi Gras, which shares many of the same characteristics of Carnival, and the rest of the world has some of its own unique ones as well. So people try to connect the traditions of Carnival with pagan festivals of, the solstice or some of the growing season. But in fact, scholars say that the first mentions of Carnival are around 1200 ACE, long after paganism was pretty much gone. But that's not to say that Carnival did not incorporate some older traditions of other festivals. The sort of Feast of Fools festivals that were held, in which people had role reversals. The Romans talked about German tribes that used to do this, where the men and women would exchange clothes, and it was sort of an upside-down world type festival. And during these Feast of Fools festivals, often the poor and dispossessed would dress up as nobles or priests and whatnot and mock them and indulge in stereotypes about their behavior. Their corruption, their venality, stupidity, etc. And, again, this is the sort of trickster archetype that runs through society. It's also a chance one day or 1 week of a year for people to vent their frustrations, to act in excess, to do behaviors that ordinarily would, get them in trouble. And of course, the tradition of masks, wearing different outfits, covering your face. You have anonymity, or you are, appearing as someone else or something else. And the sinister aspect of masks with Carnival are really fruitful grounds for all sorts of adventure hooks, as we'll see. So as the criteria that I mentioned in my previous video on festivals, you have public and private celebrations. With Carnival, we think, generally speaking of, it's a public celebration. It's a chance for the entire community to get together, have these excessive displays, vent frustrations or whatever. But you could have private balls and masquerades, as we'll see, which again can be really cool for setting up some encounter in a D&D setting. And while the festival has its roots in the religious, liturgical calendar, it isn't really a religious festival. You're not necessarily going to get in trouble for taking part in it or not taking part or even objecting to it. The authorities allow this to happen. It gives people a chance to vent their frustrations, but you don't have to. What you want to do, just like the other festivals, the archetypes that I mentioned, is to think of ways to connect the traditions of Carnival to your homebrewed world. Now, an obvious point of entry is religion. It was based on the religious calendar, so can you connect it to the various religions that are practiced in your world? And this would depend on your pantheon, maybe the areas of the world, depending on, whether in certain cities or settlements some religions are practiced or others aren't. If you have a large city, maybe all the different religions are. And again, it might mean something to the evil ones or cults and things. So I tend to use the Greyhawk Pantheon because people are familiar with it. So I can think of Bakab or Garl Glitter Gold or Oldamara, some of the gods who love trickery and illusion, and a carnival type thing with masquerades and people role reversals and people not being who they are would seem to connect very well with those. You also have Cord, which I think would be amenable to the excess, the drinking and brawling and stuff. But you could also have a connection to Pelor or Elona or something like that, in terms of the growing season, in terms of nature, fertility, this sort of thing. But you don't have to go religion. You could go in a secular direction. You could have a week-long carnival-type celebration that commemorates some great event, some victory in battle, the independence of a city, the founding of a city. It can be in honor of the founder or a ruling family, something like this, that each year they give the populace this week of excess. You can mix and match those two. You can combine some commemorative event with some temple that, officially sanctions this festival. And the thing to do is think of commemorative events in your own culture and connect some of those traditions to make the carnival in your homebrewed world something truly unique. So the length of carnival varies from culture to culture and over time, but at times in places it lasted more than several weeks, which would make this sort of festival, if you copy that, more extensive even than the royal festivals that I mentioned before. And these, in terms of commerce, people coming into a city, the merchants setting up their wares, the political ramifications if people aren't allowed to celebrate this, and of course the intrigue, because you do have all these strangers, so you have chance for crime, for intrigue, the anonymity of wearing costumes. In other words, there's tons of adventure hooks that can come out of having a carnival type festival in your world. Anytime you have masks, this allows your players or the NPCs to enter a city and move around in it with anonymity. So you could have your players enter a forbidden city during a carnival-like festival wearing their disguises, and so they could, investigate some cult or what's going on there, or they could steal some item, or they could rescue someone being held there. And conversely, the players could be warned that a group of NPCs is going to commit some crime or do some nefarious act under, the cover of carnival. The robbery of a temple or the king's treasury, the assassination of some political leader, the kidnapping of someone. Tremendous encounter possibilities, because if the players are tracking this group of NPCs, they're trying to do it in the mayhem of carnival with people in disguise. So think about having a combat scenario in the middle of one of these celebrations. Talk about difficult terrain. And then, of course, if this does occur, you do have civil guard around. Yes, they're under a lot of pressure, but they're going to have every person available on duty. Now, another thing the cover of Carnival does is it allows different underground sects to hold secret ceremonies, calling on forbidden gods or conducting banned rites under the cover of masks and different costumes. And these costumes themselves can serve dark functions. You could have robes with symbols of evil or amulets of evil that are just a costume, just a prop. It's all in good fun. And sects can find drunken revelers and lure them into their rites, with promises of licentious rewards. So in this way, say the summoning of a demon could be facilitated with human sacrifice. You have tons of strangers in town that could conveniently disappear without a trace. Family members of these people could come to town sort of searching for them and then contact the players, enlist their help in finding them. And then the players start to investigate. They discover this dark cult. They discover what's been happening. And then, of course, the cult turns around and says, who are you guys? And the nature of carnival with this sort of wild excess, you think of this sort of, orgiastic energy going out there. What effect might this have in terms of, wild magic or the power of the gods? An evil sect, again, could tap into this energy to commit some act or to have some cataclysmic event happen or to summon some creature. So the power balance between the spellcasters in an area could be put out of alignment when all this wild, crazed energy is around. And also think of the upside down aspect, the Feast of Fools kind of thing, the trickster thing. When you have these kind of role reversals, when you have this really crude mockery of the established order, strange things can happen. Sometimes during the Middle Ages, they say if things would get out of hand in a town, the populace might take a drunken fool or something and set him up as the Pope with a parade, and they'd hire the prostitutes of the town to play nuns. And the religious authorities, when they saw this, quickly tamped this down. Right? Now, what might happen if this sort of thing gets out of hand and the authorities get nervous and try to tamp this down? You could have a full-scale riot on your hands. And you have the power of the gods themselves. If they become displeased, really bad things can happen. And then you have the opportunity to create elaborate private celebrations utilizing the traditions of Carnival. You can have the nobles in some elaborate masquerade. Royal masquerades can be excellent grounds for all sorts of intrigues. Kidnappings, poisonings, robbery are just that kind of mischief that these people can get up with. Especially the nobles, oftentimes they don't have anything else to do but to scheme against each other. So if the players are invited to this kind of masquerade, who knows what sort of, nefarious activities they're going to confront or be accused of committing. Because everyone is pretending to be someone else at these events, but you have all sorts of people with vendettas and intense grievances who are attending this who may see this as an opportunity to get revenge. So all you need to do is throw some player characters in the mix and you have Carnival intrigue. So there you have it. Thank you, Lauga, for making the comment. I love to read the comments, and I love to have my creativity stimulated by them. So keep the comments coming. I'd love to have you subscribe. But in the meantime, of course, my friends, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.